So welcome. We're week 6 of 12. Holy smokes. That's pretty exciting. So we're starting into a new area this week. And the whole idea of how do we design work. And it's today in particular really blew my socks off in terms of how we really have to be future focused when we're thinking about what work is going to look like, and then the skills that we're going to need people to have in order to do the work that we're trying to do. So I have a whole bunch of videos I wanted to share with you today to sort of link it to our case study and give you a good example of how it might really change in the future. So let me start sharing my screen. And okay, so can you guys now see the PowerPoint slides? And there's Rachel. Let me see if I can see some more people. Oh yeah, and I'm looking up because you're, okay, there. So you can see now. So the discussion today is about workforce planning. And what I wanted to do was think about the process first. So you had some reading to do about the workforce planning process. And then we were going to apply it to thinking about what's going on at the pharmacy. And the thing that blew me away is the very first step about understanding the organization and its environment, which kind of leads to the question of how might technology change the design of work at AHP. So that's sort of the agenda for today. And so I wanted to sort of start with the model that I asked you guys to have a look at. And so it's got these steps. And I guess my first question is thoughts. What did you think of that as a model for planning workforce and your needs for the future? And if you raise your hand, I'll see, I'm looking up because you're on my upper screen, but if you raise your hand using the reactions, then I'll know if somebody wants to make a comment. Eleanor, did you put your hand up?
Yeah, I'll try it out.
Popped to the top of my screen.
Yeah. I found it was interesting, I think, that they are good to have as distinct steps, but how they are on the wheel sort of works because there was so much overlap at each stage. So it was a good breakdown, but interesting to see how each step really requires and leads to the actions of the previous or the next step. Those were my first impressions on it.
Yeah. And I think also the wheel really gets to the idea that it's an iterative process. It's not a straight line. And so I might get so far into the process, something might change in my environment, and I've got to go back and do some adjustments and stuff. So the whole idea of being really agile and customer focused when applying this kind of thing would be very important. Any other comments that people want to make about it? Was there anything there that you didn't understand, that didn't make sense? Nobody wants to pick up on that one, eh? Okay. So if you think about Aisha's pharmacy, where do you think she might, in that cycle of planning, where do you think she might have some of her biggest challenges? Doug, you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that she kind of put forth there is hiring and retention. Like one of the things that she said, that there's a very high churn rate. They tend to done the research on it, and it happens every time a new semester comes in forth. But I mean, that in itself, is as fluid as the wheel is, with that much turnover, then you've got increased training costs. You're constantly having to go back and all the onboarding costs of employees. So I think one of the things that really is key to focus on is how can she retain that staff? Is it through flexible scheduling? Maybe she comprises her staff like on a part-time model where she can have an increased, diverse workforce, but maybe they only work 1 to 2 hours a week so that it's friendly for their study or anything like that. But I think that's, together, that's going to be quite a challenge for her to combat that.
Okay, and that focuses on the customer service rep, which are the majority of her employees, right?
Right.
John, you had a comment you wanted to make.
Yeah, I just wanted to support what Doug was saying. That was pretty much the number one thing that I saw looking through this. Like, how are you going to attract new talent when you can't keep your current staff? And also with her expansion plans over the next 5 years, she's going to require talent with different areas of expertise. So the same thing, applies there. How are you going to connect, get more if you can't keep what you have?
Okay, so has anybody seen any solutions out there to this problem, especially within the retail sector? Let's go to Steve first, and then we'll go to Doug. Okay.
For the retail part, the first thing that came to my mind was virtual clerks, which happens to be in the news lately. That would have been something that might be able to help.
Okay. And Doug?
Again, I think I touched on a little bit there. Look for maybe flexibility in scheduling. I think you need to get creative with your staffing, and maybe there's cross training involved with staff that she does have, or as we discussed a couple weeks ago, changing how you look at hiring. Maybe they go to more of a model of open hiring or something like that. But I think that needs to be evaluated and, try different things and see if she can increase that hiring rate, and, even go to the retention aspect of the things. Maybe she has to implement more things to keep her staff, maybe increase benefits, maybe some other sort of compensation or bonuses or something to keep them around.
Okay, so right now, Aaron, I'm going to go to you next, but right now, and then we'll go to Ryland, but right now, Steve sort of presented something that's very forward-looking in terms of how do I use technology to solve the problem. So that might be a longer-term solution that Aisha could look at. And what Doug is recommending are some immediate applications of how do we resolve this. Erin, what are your thoughts?
I think, the idea that they have the information that, they're noticing changes at the end of semesters or change of semesters. It's like, well, that doesn't really answer why people are choosing to leave and not come back. So do they have information through exit interviews or through employee feedback as to why they are choosing to leave and not come back? Is there no incentive? Do they have enough, because there's the information that, their current business does include a lot of the student population? Is there increased business throughout the school year so that, maybe they don't need as many CSRs through the summer, so that maybe they, can have fewer in the summer and then provide incentives for some of those people to come back in the fall? It feels like there is a lot of information lacking in terms of why those people are leaving. And I think it's really important to take that into consideration before making any big decisions.
So that's a really good comment, is around the data and having the data-driven decision process. So thanks for introducing that idea too. And Ryland, what were you thinking?
Having worked in in that really student focused model, there isn't necessarily a solution for why people aren't coming back. When you're working in that campus setting, the turnover on the term is really normal, and that's just, it is a stepping stone job. It's nothing against the organization, nothing that they can or can't do. I would shift the focus. I don't disagree with Doug on that flexible scheduling, but also just on having somebody that is consistent, whether that be herself or Ben, or hiring somebody that is a full-time person, and really refining that training process so you lose the least amount of time and resources when you do bring those staff in and out with those seasonal changes.
So simplifying the content of a job so it's easier to train or somebody to do it. Is that sort of the encapsulated
Yeah,
idea there?
yeah, just having a really clear and simple, here's what you're doing, that makes it fast and efficient to have that turnover.
Okay.
And then somebody consistent to deliver that.
Okay, like that. That's another possible solution. And Dawn, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I kind of thought with her expansion coming up and just her and Ben and sort of upper management, it's probably time to bring on sort of a manager for the customer service representatives to take on that role of hiring them and trying to keep them and whatnot, and maybe look at somebody that's currently there and start grooming them towards being a manager when these new changes come in.
Okay, so freeing her up from worrying about these things, because somebody's got to be driving the strategic activities at the pharmacy if it's going to continue to develop, and allowing somebody else to sort of do the operational pieces with the CSRs. Okay, great. So lots of interesting ideas. And when I was sitting there and I was working on this and trying to apply it to the pharmacy, I got stuck on understanding the organization and its environment. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that I saw, because certainly through the pandemic, we have seen more and more of these self-checkout machines. Shoppers Drug Mart has tons of them. I've got a tiny little grocery store that is just down the road from me, and I was shocked to see that they had brought in a whole bunch of self-serve, I think about 6 self-serve counters. So that's the kind of thing in Canada that we're used to seeing. But I did a little Googling, and I'm not guaranteeing that this site is the best site in the world, because I didn't use all my academic rigor and all the rest of it to go through it, because I was sitting there going like, I'm blown away. I can't believe some of this stuff that I'm seeing. So I put the URL for it, and it's basically 14 examples of digital technology that's coming into retail stores. And the one thing that the main impression I came out with after going through the article, and this was like 2021, so it's a year and a bit old. In Canada, we are quite conservative compared to other countries. So some of the things that I saw that we're getting to the future, well, the first one, and you might have heard about this, are the self-checking stores. So there's nobody running, there's no CSR. And this is a great example of what's going on at Amazon.
What's going on, Rich Romero here, Rich on Tech. This is the new Amazon Dash Cart that is at the Amazon Fresh Store in Woodland Hills. This is a really cool piece of technology because it allows you to self-checkout as you shop in the store. So you can see they've got some cameras and lights to recognize what you put in there. They give you a few bags, and it also has a weight sensor in there, so you can put in stuff like produce. And this is your screen that will tell you what you just put in the cart. It'll place your drink and also your Alexa shopping list. So that makes it easy to add stuff at home and then find it in the store. And this is where you scan your phone to get started. So here's how it works. You something on the shelf, and by the way, all of the price tags at this store are digital, which is really cool. So there's the store. So let's say we want to buy some tuna fish, and you put it into the cart. Oh, it already found it. You see that? So these cameras are pretty good at seeing stuff very quickly, and you just put it in there, and boom, you got it. So it says $2.59, and I've got a little warning subtotal of what I'm purchasing, which is really cool. There's your meats over there, some seafood there. And let's try something else, because now at the store there's a mix of traditional brands and also organic stuff, and a lot of Amazon products as well. So something like this Donut Cafe. And so if I just put this here, oh, look at that, I already found it. You hear that little sound? And we should try taking something out of the cart and seeing what happens then. So here's some cereals. Let's try little mini frosted wheats. So these $3.64, and there it goes. It's almost too fast. It recognizes these things very quickly. So now let's say, okay, you know what? I decided I'm not gonna get these. Let's see what happens. So if I take this out of the cart, it now says, oh, quantity of one removed. And again, one of the neatest things about this is that you've got this subtotal here that lets you see exactly how much you're spending as you go through the store. So if you're anything like me and you're spending a lot more than you think sometimes when you go into the store, this will help you stay on task. So a couple other looks at this store. They've got, it's kind of like a mix of a Whole Foods and a traditional grocery store. So you've got your regular brands here. And again, like I said, you've got a lot of Amazon brands. So right next to the bubbly, you've got the Happy Billy lime sparkling water. And of course, you've got the Coke brands, you've got 365 brands, so a lot of those as well. And let's see, this kind of reminds me of a dairy case at a Whole Foods. And some other things that are interesting is in this Woodland Hills store, they do have beer and wine. So, and alcohol, I guess I should say too. Now going the wrong way, so I'm gonna back up. I'm gonna back in here. And let's see what happens now if you try to buy some liquor, because this is something, well, this has like a security thing on it, so I don't think that would work. So let's see what happens when we put this in here. Age restricted, ID will be checked at the dash cart lane. Okay, well, I'm gonna take that out. So let's put that in there. I'm gonna take this out. See if it notices. Yep, okay. So removed. Done. So big selection there. And also ask Alexa. They've got a whole bunch of these Alexa devices around the store, so you can ask questions. And another big thing about this place is the prepared foods. So they've got a full deli, sandwiches, stuff you can just kind of grab and go all from here. $5.99 for a sandwich. And let me give you a better look at this cart right there. This is pretty hefty cart. You can't take these out of the store, by the way. And there's hygiene stations everywhere. Another thing, they advertise pizza for $1.79. Fresh baked bread. I saw bread for 89 cents. There it is. What do you think of this thing? Pretty cool, huh? Work here? No. Oh, okay. It's not working. Uh-oh. No. French bread, 89 cents. Let's see, how would it recognize bread? This doesn't, does this have, oh, it does. Okay. So it does have a, let's see, ready? Okay. It's too fast. You're too fast. Cart, $9.47. Oh yeah, there's one more thing to show you. Over here, they do have a selection of some Amazon items. They call it the Best of Amazon up there. And so there are just a couple things, not a whole lot of stuff, but they do have all the Amazon devices for sale here too. So you can get those. It's galore, and with this you can just, I've got pickup as well, so if you want to pick up stuff from your Amazon account. And here are the checkout lanes. So you can use a traditional cashier, or This is the dash lane right here. So here's the dash lane. And all you have to do for the dash lane is literally, once you bring this into that green area, it's going to check you out, send a receipt to your email, and you are done. Pretty cool stuff. All right, thanks so much for watching. Rich Demiro here. Rich.
Pretty cool, eh? So can you see that type of technology moving within the pharmacy? Like, were there any things in there that you could see transferring to the pharmacy? I can see Rylan and Aaron have your hands up. Do you have a comment, or did you just forget to take them down?
I think that this is where you have to have a really solid understanding of the needs of your community or the expectations of your community, and be conscious of the language you're using when you say things like leading edge, and how you want to differentiate yourself from the big retailers. Because if, you know, or how you want to diversify your employees even, because if you maybe want to have electronic checkouts, maybe you then have wellness consultants or product consultants instead of just standard CSRs. But also, depending on your industry, you know, maybe it's not appropriate, or in something like a wellness industry, to remove points of contact within the business. But, you know, I think it's really important to figure out who your customers are, what community you're in, and really what you're aiming for. Be very conscious of the language, but also just like, you know, maybe it's not going, you know, 0 to 60 on the technology. You know, you might have to pull your community along with you, little baby steps, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's being very conscious of everything.
So being customer driven in your technology choices.
Yeah.
Okay. Doug, you had a comment.
I was actually kind of leaning on the opposite side of the coin there. I think where we've indicated that it's, you know, close to a university, you're dealing with younger demographics, very into technology. I think this aspect could be very beneficial, knowing your customer base. And I think it will, you know, you probably won't use it obviously for, you know, pharmacy and medications, but you know, as part of the 5-year plan that she has, I mean, I can see this working with the food and snacks, the house and home, your baby supplies, your skincare, your beauty, your personal care, like all the products and services that she's identified she wants to get in on top of the pharmacy. I think this would be a great fit. And again, you know, if your customer base is highly student, which is driven, which it appears that it is based on the readings, then I think you have a great opportunity to introduce technology and reduce that burden of staffing.
Okay. Good comments there. And Eleanor, what did you want to add to it?
Almost somewhere in between Aaron and Doug, saying that I agree with the predominantly student population as clients, and we can imagine that many of them are younger. I can see immediately something like the Alexa base going in to answer people's questions, because it's convenient, it's a technology that people are familiar with, and it just reduces people needing to have face-to-face conversations. And I think statistics show that a lot of people have social anxiety in the younger generations, and so that's just an easy, at ease thing that people can take advantage of that technology. But then along with what Aaron was saying about being careful with your choices and being customer driven, I also think it's an interesting way to an opportunity to look at how to be employee driven. For example, accessibility. If you are able to employ someone who otherwise couldn't leave their home, or who is immunocompromised, like there are different situations where if you can have someone on a screen and they're still a person, and they're still gaining employment, but there's just new accessibility options to have them in. That would be, I think, a clever way to introduce that technology without fully rescaping the entire industry and without taking everybody out all at once.
Yeah.
I just think that's a neat way to walk the line.
So some interesting ideas that you guys are percolating. So that idea of maybe having a remote healthcare worker available to customers to answer their questions about products and stuff, but the person doesn't actually have to be in the store to do it. They could be on a screen and the customer could ask questions. So some really cool stuff, but are you starting to get the drift about understanding the future of where your industry is going as being a big part of this whole planning process? Whoops. So some of the other things that I saw on that website, let me just move us down so in case you couldn't see them. This one here was at Marks and Spencer's in England. And so they had traditional cash registers, they had self-serve cash registers, and then they had what they call queue busters. And so if somebody only had a couple of items, the queue buster could use handheld technology to check somebody out. So they didn't have to line up. So they could be anywhere in the store. So if I went into the store and I was just buying stuff in one of those areas, let's say I was in the beauty section, I got some assistance from somebody, and then they had a handheld and they could check out my items and away I go. I've seen this in airports a lot more, but not in retail stores, but the whole idea of going to vending machines for some of the more traditional things. And then this is an example from Nike, and what they were doing was combining the online with the in-store experience. So you go online and you pick out the stuff that you want to try on. They put them into a locker for you, and then when you arrive at the store, all the stuff that you wanted to try on is there in the sizes that you requested, and you get to try them on and decide which stuff you wanted to take. So sort of streamlining, although as a browser I would not enjoy that process at all, but you know, maybe I would learn to love it. And the final one I wanted to share with you just kind of blew me away. And you have to watch the subtitles to get the full idea of this one, but this is a concept from Japan, and it really gets to this issue of how do I use technology to replace some of the repetitive tasks that I currently have people doing, and have people doing more challenging, maybe kind of work. So let's see what a bingo box is all about. So, stop. Okay, so what do you think of a Bing box? Have you ever seen anything quite like that one? Okay, and that might be the future of where, because I was sort of looking at it and going, okay, they've got over-the-counter drugs. They have alcohol in those units, so there has to be some kind of control mechanism. So there may be, and it came back to that idea of having customer service available, but is available through a video link. So it's a remote worker. Kim.
I mean, it's definitely a really neat idea, but my instant reaction is, oh my gosh, think of all the people this is going to put out of work. You know, that's my instant thought, is that there's just so many people that will no longer be needed in the retail business because of the implementation of these new fresh ideas, which is fabulous. But at the same time, it's like, well, you have all these people that are trained for these jobs in retail. So now they're going to have to look for jobs elsewhere, and they're going to have to be re-educated and possibly go back to school and be retrained and completely rethink, you know, what their jobs are in the future. So it's going to be a complete reorganization of, I think, our job market.
So I understand the gut response, because when they brought in the self-checkouts, I refused to use them. And I made the decision to line up and to wait for a cashier, because I felt that was important to support people working. But my thoughts on this have been changing because of what's happening. For years and years, they have talked about the fact that we are going to reach this point where there's a real labor shortage. So I mean, in my career, we lived through a period where there was a labor surplus. And so we went through lots of reorganization, downsizing, laying off, all kinds of stuff like that. And what the forecast of the future is that is no longer the reality. The reality is a labor shortage. So helping people to recognize the skills that will be important in the future is a really important thing that needs to be done to help people prepare for those changes. John, and then Doug.
I just wanted to say, in response to Kim, I absolutely understand what you're saying for sure. But at the same time, so many technological advances over the years has done just that. So it's made lots of jobs obsolete, like washing machines, or even something as obscure as at bowling alleys, the things that set up the pins for you, like that took away jobs too. And but the people who did that had to be retrained and whatnot. So, but you're absolutely right. There's a lot more retail positions out there, that's for sure. But
yeah, Doug?
I'm something along the same lines. I was going to say, you know, the technology itself is neither good nor bad. It's a corporation mentality and how they decide to integrate that technology. I mean, if it's used to suppress wages and you know, replace your workforce, that's one thing. But like you said, there's a real shortage, and if you can use this to continue your operations, then that's obviously a great benefit to the company. But again, it all comes down to the corporate mentality, and I guess to a certain extent, corporate greed.
Okay, yeah. So it's finding that balance. And there are lots of industries that are really suffering right now because of a lack of workers. Eleanor, you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, so also in response to what everyone's been saying and along similar lines, but just to say that where technologies are being implemented and jobs are being removed, we also have to remember the other side of jobs being added in those technology fields, in those monitoring fields, and that there are people using retail, and as an example, there are people who love retail, who are trained in that, and that's their field and their passion. But I mean, when we think about taking away what could be considered more entry-level work, is that what people have because it's their passion, or is it what was available to them because it was the easiest, or the the acceptance criteria is the lowest? And is it taking it away, or is it giving someone an opportunity to be able to train? And if other jobs become more attainable and training is made available to people, then maybe, I don't know, my opinion is not to fight for the cashier jobs, but to give people the opportunity to go for technology or management or whatever else they might be interested in. So it is that finding that balance between taking things away and creating opportunities for people.
Okay. Thanks. Rylan?
I think Eleanor touched on a really good point. For me, I'm kind of both sides of this coin, but the really crucial piece is that if we're going to be moving to these technology-driven solutions, that training and that education and accessibility to those things is huge. And that's not necessarily readily available for these higher level jobs that this is kind of driving towards. So it's a really big systems change that's coming, and there's a lot of different pieces that are involved.
Yeah. But if we think about this from a business perspective, if Aisha doesn't respond to the changes in the environment around her, and she decides that she's going to maintain a traditional retail environment and does her planning and all the rest of it, the big issue is if this has started to be adopted and she's not adopted, and her cost of labor is really high, and it's increasing the costs that she has to put on her items, unless she's providing some kind of magnificent service, she's going to lose customers, right? So it kind of leads, to some key thoughts about the workforce planning that were summarized on that website that I had directed you towards. And I think the first two are really, really important, especially in this case, that you got to start with the organizational strategy and the business plan. Now she's got a strategy, but it is very basic. It needs flushing out. It needs what's happening in the industry part added to, which is sort of the second, which is about being future focused. So what is happening within our industry? How might I have to deliver services differently in order to remain competitive? And how does that impact on the skills that I'm going to need? The next one about being flexible is very important, because I kind of like that approach that Doug introduced, where we had sort of this short-term and longer-term plan, because in the short term, yeah, I need CSRs. It's not tomorrow I'm going to have all of this technology in place, but maybe by the end of the 5-year plan, if I don't have some of that technology going, I won't have a store. So the rest of the strategy doesn't matter. It's dynamic, and we need constant feedback and review. So going back to the diagram, it's an iterative process. And so there may be a piece of technology that's introduced into the retail sector that she's not aware of, and it kind of changes the plan and the process. Maybe it's something within the pharmacy. Maybe this is going back a long time. I hate to say some of this, but I think back to when I worked at Shoppers Drug Mart when I was a high school student, and I'd be watching these pharmacists hand counting pills, and I'm going like, this is nuts. And we used to and you can see there's been this real change between a pharmacist as a gatekeeper between you and the medicine, and the pharmacist being a healthcare partner. And so them wanting to have the pharmacist spending more time helping you understand what drugs you're taking and what the impacts might be. Next, yeah, Doug, you had a comment?
I was just going to say to go along with what you're saying as well, an integration of technology. I mean, you can even go one step further. If she partnered up with some of these virtual healthcare solutions, I know living in a remote part of Nova Scotia, that's kind of the latest push. We don't have a whole lot of doctors in town, so some of this is going towards virtual consultation. Sorry.
Yep.
So if she looks to those kind of technologies as well, she could incorporate herself as a one-stop shop. You come in, you have your meeting with your doctor, prescriptions get filled, and you're out the door, making it a very convenient solution for the public.
Right. So there's so many opportunities, and keeping that, getting stuck in the frame of this is what a pharmacy looks like in 2020 or 2022, sorry, isn't going to help her really prepare for the future. And so there are so many opportunities out there. There might have to be partnerships. So if what she's saying, what she's realizing is that she's going to need more people with the technological background so that she can run videos and remote workers and stuff like that, then those are completely different skill sets that she would be hiring for, and how she might be hiring them as well. So she might be just bringing in consultants or gig workers for particular pieces of the skill pie that is going to develop in the future. And I love the last one. It's as much an art as it is a science. So we need to, Aaron made a great comment about the need to collect data and to use that to drive some of the decision making. But there's also understanding your customer, and so there isn't just one way of doing this, and how a small organization like the pharmacy might do it would be probably a lot different than what you might see throughout Shoppers Drug Mart as a huge national chain, right? But some really interesting thoughts on that one. So I'm going to stop sharing and open it up. So any further thoughts that you guys have about this challenge facing Aisha and workforce planning and how to do all of that stuff? Does anybody know if your organization is already doing workforce planning and how they're approaching it? Doug, you're killing yourself laughing. What's that?
I said, yeah. I mean, as Ryland was saying, we running a fitness recreation facility. It's a constant challenge. I mean, it is a lot of younger students that work with us. So we are constantly kind of putting our heads together and trying to look outside, think outside the box and see how we can recruit and retain our individuals. And, we're 6 months into the process. So we don't have all the answers, but it is just something that the struggle is real, and it's something that we are constantly trying to stay on top of and look at different channels.
Okay. Dawn, you had a comment.
Yeah, when I first read through that, and when I was thinking in our workplace, do we have something like workforce planning? My first reaction was no. And then I started thinking about, we actually do this every single year. We do staff schools every year. We look at numbers of students coming in, students who leave, students who are grade 2 to 3, that changes the whole dynamic of the school. So every year, this time of year, actually, we're going through and restaffing basically all of our schools. So it's a yearly process. And then we're always kind of looking for years in the pay. And now it's up to the fact what was 5 years ago, what we do for the next year. It's as much prediction as it is going to be.
Okay. I didn't hear everything because your audio is a little hard to hear, but so even though you didn't think it was going on, you thought about it a bit more and you saw evidence of that, right? Yeah. Okay. Workforce planning kind of went out of favor in the 80s. And I think that probably had more to do with the fact that there was an oversupply. But now that there's an undersupply, workforce planning, I mean, if I can't get the critical skills that I need in order to operationalize the strategic plan, I've got a big business problem. And people our organizations are seeing that is becoming more and more the issue. And some are already well into that. Now there's a chat thing. Do I need to? Oh, they need that at Costco. What do they need, John?
I posted that a long time ago. That was
Okay.
about the Q Buster.
Yeah, the Q Buster. That was kind of a cool thing. And if you think about you know, in the restaurants, it's all handheld, right? So it's just taking existing technology and using it in a different way, right? So you can see that understanding what it is you need in terms of skills, there might be especially if you're in an industry that's undergoing a lot of change, there may be a short-term plan. How do I manage the skill shortages that we're experiencing today, with the realization that those shortages are going to continue. So I need to bring in technology to get rid of some of the labor intensive, less skilled work. And then that starts to change who it is I'm looking for in terms of doing my hires. Okay. Any other thoughts? Eleanor?
To add to that, I would say in my workplace, we can't as easily determine how many employees we have at any given time. A lot of it is set by Parliament. But what we have found currently is using technology to change, like adapt and add responsibilities for our workforce. So instead of doing only in-person events, now we have the ability to outreach to students in different provinces and different countries. And so it's not taking anything away. And for me, I can foresee maintaining a lot of what we have in the, I don't know, novelty, the benefits of having in-person staff and maintaining our old technology. It's a museum, but at the same time, using the technology to advance what we're doing in addition. So it's an interesting, just slightly different perspective on how it's going to change things.
Well, even within the museum and the art world, a lot of the larger museums and art galleries have gone to providing virtual sites where you can go and you can look at the pictures, but you also can learn a lot about the pieces, and it's really quite interesting how technology has made that available. Yeah.
And another really significant priority for us right now is correct and proper digitization of records and archival requirements and legislation and things. And so that has actually created new jobs for us. It was a large contract that we entered into with a digitization company, and now we have digital preservation staff that didn't used to exist. So just another different way that it's helping.
So that is a nice segue into where we're going over the next couple of weeks, because I mean, the material you're going to be looking at, the new material you're going to look at this week is looking at how we collect, how human resources collects the information and about jobs. So do we focus on the job and do a job analysis, or do we focus on the competencies that people need to have in order to be within, to do the different jobs? And if you think about this week, when you guys went through the stuff about organizational structure, when you're looking at running an agile organization, it's competencies that you're worried about, because it's not Linda's job and she's going to do this, that, and the next thing. It's like, what competencies does Linda bring to the table and where do we best use them right now? So it's a whole different way of thinking about jobs and how we record what they are, and the understanding of what they are and what skills we need is so important, because it drives the whole recruiting and selection, learning and development. So, I mean, it's a key piece that human resources is involved in, that impacts on so many other areas. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Okay, well, that was kind of cool. Thanks to everybody for your participation. And I hope you enjoy reading the competency models. And I hated job analysis. It was so boring. And that's one of the things about job analysis. Nobody likes it. So what happens? They get out of date so quickly. And as soon as they're out of date, they're not providing good data to drive the other systems. And the other thing, when we get into the whole learning and development and performance management, we'll look at how these shortages in labor are really changing the mindset of, I'm just going to go out there and hire for the skills that I need. Now it's more like, how do I develop those skills in-house? Because I've got good people, and yeah, Eleanor, you're nodding because you're already experiencing that, right? So we have good people, we have this new requirement. How do I help them to develop those skills so that they can do the work that we have coming up in the future? So a whole different perspective than what we had when there was a lot of labor and a lot of choice. I remember I was working for a technology company, must have been the 90s. And, if I put an ad out for a programmer, within an hour, I had 100 to 200 applicants. And so my problem was, how do I process this information? Now you put out an ad, and if you don't get any responses, it isn't unusual. So it's all changing, and this labor force supply and demand thing is a really important part of that. So we've got some exciting stuff ahead of us, and I think we're finished this formal part for today, and I'll hang around a little bit if anybody wants to ask any questions. But otherwise, enjoy next week's material, and I'll see you same place, same time next week.